The Unlikely Innovators with Mike Commito and Steve Gravel. Presented by Cambrian R&D and the Center for Smart Mining.
Mike, in many ways, we're out of the blue and into the black.
Oh, wow,
It's
that's
a deep
good.
cut, and folks that'll be listening to this episode will eventually get it. But of course, we're back with another episode of The Unlikely Innovators, and this time we'll be coming to you live from Cambrian College's E-Dome. How did you think the episode went, Mike?
I thought it was great. I was, so to pull the full curtain back, we did a live podcast. I mean, you're not hearing it live, but we did have live members of a studio audience in the E-Dome at Cambrian with our esteemed guest, Shouyi Ma, who is the president and CEO of Hanson Canada, which is a longstanding, very important partnership with Cambrian College. But I was joking with the audience, Steve, that that's how you know you've made it in the podcasting world, when you do a live podcast in front of real people.
Granted, they show up.
Many of them were from our department, which we appreciate the support, but nevertheless, it was still a live audience, and no one's going to ever take that away from us.
Well, yeah, especially now that you've admitted that some of them were from our department. You didn't have to do that, but you did. You're very transparent.
I'm a very transparent guy. I cannot tell a lie. I'm like a young Abe Lincoln.
Yeah, although, we'll have to look up when he died, because we might be the same age as him.
This is taking a turn.
Yeah, but anyway, we're going to send you to the live podcast in just a second, but it was really great to hear the perspectives from Shouyi and have all of his experience encapsulated in a really good chat in front of our students, and now coming to you wherever you get your podcasts. So right now we'll go to Shouyi Ma.
Wow, thank you. Thanks for joining us this morning. Before we get started, though, I do want to acknowledge the long-standing support Cambrian has had for Indigenous learners and communities by acknowledging and respecting that we are gathered on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe people of Turtle Island, and proudly recognize our local hosts, Atikameksheng and Anishinaabeg. We also recognize the contributions of Wahnapitae First Nation and the Métis Nation of Ontario. So, thank you for coming this morning. We're here, we're live. I always dreamed as a little boy of hosting a live podcast.
Yeah, we were joking off air that we're Regis and Kathy Lee, and I'll leave it up to the folks at home to decide which of us is Regis and which of us is Kathy Lee.
I was of course joking about dreaming. Podcasts obviously weren't around when I was a young man, but as a podcast geek, this is really exciting. This is when you know you've made it, when you have a live guest in front of a live studio audience, even though they are being held captive in this room for us right now. We appreciate you joining us. But I want to introduce our guest and also say that this is Shouyi is our 81st interview. So we started this podcast in 2021 in the summer to try to promote applied research and what happens at Cambrian College on the innovation and research front. And from there, we went on, and we've now been doing this for a couple of years and had a number of exciting guests throughout the way with us, including Shouyi Ma today. So quick bio before we get into the conversation. Shouyi and his wife moved to Toronto from China in 2003, seeking a new country in which to expand their education and build their careers. Shouyi obtained his MBA from the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management, and then earned his Chartered Professional Accountant CPA designation. Following his education, Shouyi gained more management experience at large Canadian retailers such as Shoppers, Drug Mart, and Rexall, before becoming president and CEO of Hanson Canada, which is a very important partnership for Cambrian. So we're very excited to welcome Shouyi Ma to the Unlikely Innovators today. Welcome.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Stephen.
You're very welcome. Pleasure to have you. We always ask our guests on the show kind of the what did you want to be when you grew up question, but we always try to frame it a little more eloquently. But since I've already said that, I guess, can you maybe, before we get into what you've been doing now with Hanson, what did you think about your plans were when you grew up? What was your journey like before you came to Canada in 2003?
Did you mean before I came to Canada or after I came to Canada?
Well, both. Let's do both.
So before I came to Canada, I always wanted to become a rock star. That was a dream. It didn't work out, and I took the engineering programs and then moved to Canada and went to business school, Rotman School of Management. And since then, of course, we all had dreams when we were younger, and it was almost ironic. My first job was with Nortel. It's a telecom company, and I was in the leadership development program. And of course, in those kind of programs, oftentimes the subject is, hey, how do you want to design your own career path? So they will show you examples of how people's career paths go, whether you become an area expert to go deep and very focused, or wide and very kind of diverse kind of experience. And thank you, Stanley. In that case, I always enjoy different kinds of experience. And so I said, no, I enjoy the variety of things and would love to pursue that route. And they said, yeah, that's a typical route for a CEO. I said, okay, I would love to become a CEO one day. Not a makeup at all.
Yeah.
And of course, and then years later, I felt very fortunate in the sense that because of my exposure from engineering to finance, to procurement, to marketing analytics, it allowed me some of the skills and knowledges to look at a business in a more holistic view, to afford me to be in the position to say, oh, well, I know a little bit of every area, and maybe this is where we can glue them together and syndicate and make sure that everyone collaborate and make the teamwork functions the best it can. So I'm not saying we're doing the best we can, but this is how kind of we are trying to make the best out of it. So.
Yeah, and I suppose CEOs are the rock stars of business, right? If I could.
That was my dream, and I do, yeah. So
Well, we've got some guitar questions for you later, though, so don't worry.
So, interesting in your background, I didn't know you worked at Nortel. That's so cool. I've many past colleagues that worked at Nortel, and when sort of Nortel came to an end in Canada, a lot of really smart people went and did other cool things in Canada as well. And one thing we noticed in your background, you know, in the retail management space, as far as like Shoppers and Rexall goes, how would a position like that, it doesn't seem very much linked to then private education. How did you take what you learned in retail management and sort of apply that to what you're now doing with Hanson? Could you draw a line for us from those two places?
Absolutely. I think in my personal experience in that case is not a lot to do with what I did in specific industry and specific jobs. And I always focused on doing the work and doing the learning from the work. And I think the learning to learn is one of the most treasured kind of experience that I personally attribute a lot back to, is because yes, we go to university, we go to college, we go to different training programs to learn certain knowledge. But at the end of it, it's actually that kind of experience of learning that's going to repeat over time, large or small. And if we're able to kind of really stay focused to learn how to learn those skills, and over time, it really just doesn't, it makes the specific function or sector or industry almost irrelevant. It's meaningful, but it's not as much as to do with your ability to learn. So that's how I put it.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting when you look at transitioning to now where you are now. What are some of those things that you learned, sort of that culminates now? Like, what kind of specific skills or attributes do you think that you've taken on board, almost by accident, from those spaces?
I really like the last word that you use, almost by accident. To be honest, my life journey, if you look at the experience over the past 20-something years, since I came to Canada, it's been 20 years, almost a lot of things are by accident. It was largely to do with the kind of the curiosity of to learn new things, to get new experience, and I think is to keep that open mind. And I remember having this similar fireside chat with the former president of Cambrian College, Bill Best, and we were chatting, and he put it much eloquently and elegantly than I did. And he said, you know, it's about saying yes to a lot of different things. If I said no, it would actually prevent myself from getting the new experience, the new exposure, and preventing the accidents from happening. But really, in life, there's a lot of accidents that led to kind of different way of thinking, different way of doing things. And for instance, this is talking about innovation, and that's how it is. It's not because we're following exactly what to do. We're trying to innovate and do it a little differently. So
You said yes to the live podcast, so here we are.
that's what I did. And thank you.
Yeah.
Even though I'm the number 81, you're way much more experienced than I am now.
Yeah. Number one in our hearts, number 81 on the program. But we've talked about your professional experience and how that's kind of shaped, your trajectory and now your role at Hanson. But in terms of your own personal experience, we talked about and you mentioned, coming to Canada in 2003. So how has, coming to Canada as an immigrant in 2003 shaped the way that you approach delivering education to international students through Hanson Canada?
That's a very personal question because it's very relatable. When I look at the international students, I see them, I see myself in them because I've been there. And I also have that kind of sense of respect to the industry, to the responsibility that we have, that we are afforded with, because education is about building people's future. And we are changing life trajectories through education. And for that reason, the first is to say, are we doing the most responsible things for our students? And number two is, I can try to relate some of the challenges that I used to have personally and that I've been able to observe through my lenses, the potential challenges that they might have. And of course, at the same time, there's challenges and there's opportunities. And I've also seen the highlights in terms of the opportunities that the international students would uniquely be able to address, to be positioned to address, and to collaborate with the domestic students and to make 1 + 1 greater than 2.
Yeah, and I want to pick up on something that we often, from our experience at Cambrian, working with international students, and I'll just start by saying I used to work with a lot of tech startups in my past job, especially in Toronto. And you wouldn't believe, I would say 85% of them were founded by international students that do their graduate work or PhD work or spin out of a college or university. And it got me thinking, we've had folks on the podcast before that were immigrants that are now business owners in the tech space. And it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there seems to be an interesting drive among international students and a sort of a built-in entrepreneurial culture that comes with those students. Can you sort of reflect on that? Why are international students so innovative when it comes to starting new businesses?
So on this point, may I kind of just quote the Hanson Canada's mission statement?
Sure, and this is not
It's not a commercial piece,
but
but I'm going to do that. So at Hanson Canada, our mission is to change life trajectories through education for generational impact in the global community. This part, the generational impact, provides some answers to your question because I personally deeply believe a lot of things in life requires generational efforts. For instance, take myself for example. I have certain kind of learnings and exposures to this newly adopted home country, Canada. Even though after 20 years, it's still an adopted home country. There's life experience that I had never had that my children and my children's children would have. And for that reason, and the view on the world and the view on the exposure to opportunities would be very different. And for that reason, this generation, every generation of Canadians would have different ways to contribute to the country, to the community. And the entrepreneurial spirit is actually one of them that I have observed from beyond more than just a couple of countries that we see that most of our international students are from other kind of communities in Canada, is the similar situation as well. It's the first generation and the second generation, the third and the fourth, and we all have different view on the world and different exposure to opportunities, and that's why we contribute differently.
Yeah, and last night you would have seen some of those innovative ideas, but obviously we know that the weather didn't cooperate, so the Student Innovation Challenge that we were going to have at Cambrian has been postponed, but I'm putting out there that it's been rescheduled for April 17th. It'll be in the Student Life Center again, and Shouyi will come back for that. We're happy to have him as a judge again for that. The question I was going to ask you, and now I can't really ask it because we'll have to wait until April 17th, but you're going to be a judge at that, which is kind of like a Dragon's Den at Cambrian College for a lot of our students who are pitching business ideas, many of whom are international students. And so this will be kind of a cheat sheet for them because they'll kind of hear this answer in advance if they're smart enough to listen to the episode with you. But when you're looking at a new business idea or you're evaluating a business or a concept for a business, what are some of the things that you would look for to evaluate whether or not you think this idea would make sense?
Internally, what we do when we evaluate a project, number one is the purpose and the impact that this program is going to have or this project is going to have. If it's addressing a meaningful purpose, that's always it. If there's a sustainable and long-lasting value proposition that you're trying to build, that's always going to be a good idea. It doesn't matter where you are and where we are with that idea at this moment, because combining with that solid value proposition, if there's a hardworking individual behind it who is willing to learn and adapt, and that idea will be evolving over time, and given the support and the resources, it will happen. It's just a matter of time. So to go back to summarize, really, it's the value proposition, is the individual behind it, and then some of the required resources that if we can afford. So.
Hopefully the students are taking notes.
I was going to say, I mean, if you don't hit those in your pitch, I think you're going to have a hard time winning over Shouyi.
Well, sorry, before you go, I did want to ask you one question just to kind of give the students another heads up. So if we were to take the spectrum on Dragon's Den from, let's go with Arlene because she seems to be the nicest of the bunch, and then we've got Mr. Wonderful on the end. Where does Shouyi fit in that spectrum?
I was asking Christine that question. Is there supposed to be a Mr. Wonderful? No. Christine said, no, be supportive.
Of course.
Be supportive. And it also reminded me of myself. When I first came to Canada, I still remember started my first job at Nortel. And it was years after that I recalled some of the not so intelligent and not so courteous behaviors or comments that I made, and people were providing kind feedback. And at that time, I didn't appreciate as much because I didn't even fully comprehend. But over time, I thought to myself, how kind those people were to me. What an idiot I was at the time. And I think that's something that I want to remember to pass on, to say, be kind to people, and then especially the up and coming and the young minds, and you don't know what they're capable of down the road.
Yeah, and I think anyone who talks to you for more than 5 minutes just understands that there's that passion right below the surface on touching these lives, as you mentioned earlier. And I think just to extend beyond the Student Innovation Challenge, which is a really great experiential learning piece, you touch so many lives at Hanson, and you encounter so many people with all different sorts of life circumstances. And it's I don't want to be cliche, but if you had some advice for any of these students that you might be impacting day in and day out, what would you say to them? Newcomers to Canada, trying to build a life here.
I think personally, I feel that number one is still focus on building a stronger and better self, investing in yourself. That's the most important part, because that gives us the solid kind of sense of identity then we won't be lost. We won't be deterred easily by other things or people or opportunities or failures. And the other one is, really, I quote this from someone else who says, fail fast, fail forward. What it means really is to just be bold and try things as early as possible, as many times as possible, just because the learnings that we get from those early failures would really afford us more opportunities down the road. And we would be able to avoid a lot of the more costly failures later on in life as well.
Yeah, such important advice. And I think I just wanted, since we have a live studio audience, I just want to say failing fast doesn't mean hurting yourself on your snow machine. I'm not mentioning that any names here, but just keep that in mind.
It's a good lesson, but no, I think about, even from the applied research perspective, or even just through the programming here at Cambrian, that it's a great opportunity for students to learn before they go into the workforce and understand what the lesson or cost of those mistakes could be. And I think of, you were at the announcement the other day when we had the grand opening for the Chem Lab, and Haley, one of our students, talked about how working in there allowed her the chance to learn from some of these mistakes, but more importantly, give her the opportunity to correct them, right? So I think that's one of the great things about college and learning, is that you can make mistakes, and that's great, but there's always the chance to learn and correct and grow.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we wanted to have a little bit of fun because we're obviously mindful of your time today. So we have some fun questions for you. This will be a surprise to many people in the room, but I am a big fan of hockey. I write about it. I play, not well, but I play. But you and I have a similar trajectory when it comes to hockey. I didn't grow up playing hockey. I skated a little bit. We had backyard rinks, but I didn't really play hockey with full equipment until I was 30 years old. And I know that you took up hockey later in life, and your kids play hockey now. But what was it like for you getting into a new sport and learning as an adult, and now trying to continue to play as your kids learn and play as well?
Well, we're in Canada. So to begin with, hockey is just part of it. Winter is long, and otherwise, what do you do? But the reason that I got into hockey was really because my kids got into hockey. And to be honest, I didn't know what I was getting into with two boys playing hockey and 4 times a week. And at first, it was very difficult to comprehend what that really, why do you want to go to a hockey rink 8 times a week? But then realized the benefit of that. And of course, along with that, after a couple of years, and I realized I spent so much money, so much time, so much effort. And when the pandemic hit, I said to the kids, now they're 11 and 9, the boys, I said, now is the give back time. I don't know how to skate. You need to teach me, because I've spent so much money on you. I'm not going to spend money on my own lessons now. Yeah. This is the payback. So that's how I started. And it was actually fun. It gives me an opportunity to kind of really connect and also appreciate what people do playing hockey and skate. It's not an easy sport to begin with, but it's a very fun sport, and I enjoy it very much.
And I think perhaps you might be more well-connected than Mike and I, but I heard a rumor that you actually played with Wendell Clark. So you went from learning to skate during the pandemic to actually playing with Wendell Clark. That's a pretty, momentous rise. Could you talk about how that was? That the guy's a legend.
I wouldn't say I played with Wendell Clark. I would say I was on the ice at the same time. He was standing.
Same thing.
Flying.
Hey, it counts. That counts.
My disclaimer to Wendell at the time was, if I was touching you, it was not because I was trying to check you. I just wanted to stand. So, but that was a fun experience. Again, it was through Easter Seal community that Eric Linjaus and some of the other Hockey Hall of Famers organized a charitable kind of tournament, and that I was honored to be part of it, to kind of have fun, but also contribute to the community a little bit. And matter of fact, we had ambassadors from Sudbury joining us in Toronto at the time as well. So it was a lot of fun.
Are you willing to share what your stat sheet was by the end of the game? Did you have any goals or assists?
Okay, so this is the humbling part, please. That was my very first real game in life. So
What a debut.
the highlight was I was playing on every shift, and I had a kick pass to myself. That was it.
That counts.
That counts. I didn't know I was able to do it, to be honest. Yeah, but that was it. No shooting.
Hey, that's pretty impressive though, because to be honest, the reason why I didn't start playing hockey, people had asked me for years, like, you should come out. And I'm like, I'm horrible. Like I played as a kid. I grew up competitively swimming, so that was my sport. Whereas all my buddies in town, like they all played hockey growing up. Some of them played juniors, so like they're skilled hockey players. So, but then I finally found a group of guys that were kind of at my skill level. I bought gear from a guy on Maley Drive secondhand. That's what I first used. And then I think I watched a YouTube video on like what order the gear went on, because I'd never put on shin pads, pants, like everything else. So, but it was overcoming that, I think, that initial trepidation of knowing that like I'm not going to be good, but I'm not going to get any better if I just sit in my house and watch hockey and regret not playing, right? So
Absolutely. And if you're in the game, the appreciation of the sport is just a different level.
yeah.
Like now I help my kids, like when they get dressed, I said, yeah, that's not easy.
Yeah.
Even just the getting dressed part.
No, but I think even watching, now, I think obviously you don't have to play hockey to appreciate the sport, but I think playing it or trying to play it, you really see what they do and like how impressive and skilled that is. So I think it's definitely give me a better appreciation for the game.
This is turning into a hockey podcast.
Which was my plan all along. You guys fell for it.
Yeah.
Sorry, is it my question? It is, eh? Yeah, sorry.
This is live,
This
Mike.
is live. That's fine. It's all part of the show. But you mentioned wanting to be a rock star, and I think we've all actually, Steve and I have both had dreams of being a rock star. I played in a punk band in high school.
And I sing karaoke.
Yeah, so here we are, a couple of unlikely.
Why don't we have karaoke here?
Well, we could have done that.
We'll spare everyone, I think.
But and one of the things you're not the first guest who's had a musical inclination. We've had quite a few on over the couple of years that we've been doing this. They've either sung or they play guitar or they play drums. So to us, we obviously think there's a bit of a linkage between musical inclination and creativity. What do you think of that? And also the second part of that question is, what drew you to guitar, and when did you start playing?
So I got my first guitar when I was in grade 12 from a department store. It was a guitar, Dreadnought acoustic guitar, hang behind the counter from a department store. That was the story. And I got the guitar for the entire year. I didn't know what to do with it, but to just strum randomly without even tuning it. Back then, there was no internet either. So then in the university, I started kind of learning and progressing a little bit. So over the past years, I'm not that good. I'm just kind of strumming away and love collecting guitars as well. So, but the point is, the reason that I enjoy playing guitar is something that's kind of offers me the opportunity to almost meditate, and also that I can learn something new over time. And I can feel that sense of satisfaction through, if I look back, in the past year, here's the skill level that I think I have been able to kind of progress, and here's the number of songs that I can do now. And that kind of continuous kind of personal development aspect of it is very fulfilling and satisfying. Again, I'm just more of, when people ask me, do you play? I said, yeah, I entertain myself with that. So, and that's the big part of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we're going to be opening the studio audience for questions in a second, and they'll hopefully ask you more eloquent questions than I've been able to come up with. But before we do that, in keeping with sort of the guitar motif, if someone was a fly on the wall when you're strumming away behind the scenes, what is the most likely song we will, be to hear when you're doing that? What's your favorite song to play on the guitar?
There's a few. one of my favorite songs is actually Neil Young's Out of the Blue into the Black, with a full step down, detuning, and then a harmonica on a campsite. That feels pretty good.
That's actually I should ask you for tips, because I still to this day, and I started playing. My first guitar was an acoustic, and then I moved to an electric. It was an Ibanez, and then I started playing bass in high school, and I played bass for 5-6 years, and then as I got older, I realized that like my kids aren't going to want to hear me play bass. I need to go back to guitar because no one recognizes bass lines. So got into guitar, but the one thing I haven't been able to do with bass or guitar is like sing or even talk while I play. So to be able to play harmonica and play, like what's a tip? How do I figure this out? Because for the life of me, I can't.
Without realizing that I'm not good. No, but it's fun. Yeah, beautiful music. Actually, when say the great musicians like Neil Young, when they made the music, somehow it just really it syncs. So we can find an opportunity to get a guitar and a harmonica together at one point, and maybe we'll sync up.
Okay, well, I do have a harmonica.
Well, actually, we have one. No, I'm kidding. Could you imagine? No, but thank you so much for joining us for our group of questions, and I think it's been a great time getting to know you in this very live and open format. I think what we'll do now...
no pressure, of course.
No pressure at all. No. I'm very relaxed. My palms are dry. Maybe we'll open it up to the audience if there are any questions for Shouyi. And we'll edit this part out where there's a very long silence.
Oh,
right on, Carter.
So, what was your initial thought thinking, I want to go to Canada where there's blizzards and icy roads and all this good stuff?
That's a really good question. I've been asked so many times over the years. So I came from the north. So think of China. It's almost like North America. And then where I came from in the wintertime is about -15. Where I went to university is a little further north. It's like -30. So tons of snow, and people even bike to work, not driving. And so climate-wise, it wasn't a shock to me. It's a little colder when, if you go to Montreal in the wintertime, that's when we first landed. Otherwise, it's a beautiful country, and we were just kind of at that point to think, well, I'm going to go back to university to study and explore. Nothing more than that. It just one step after another, and then we fell in love with the country and just decided to stay, and then that's 20 years ago.
That makes sense. At least you had some experience with the snow, right?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Have you ever had a breaking point in your career, and how did you push past that to keep moving forward?
That's a really good question, because in life we're going to come across with so many different scenarios. And oftentimes it triggers the emotions due to those kind of setbacks or distractions. And I think my personal approach is I have a very short memory on those things. I would quickly analyze what happened and draw a conclusion on that, and then move on. Draw the conclusion, take the learning out of it, and then move on. Because the worst part of it is if that's going to have a longer term impact on us with a negative impact. The best part is let's take the learning and then move on, because I oftentimes tell myself, if I come across with someone with similar, that kind of experience, and so experience make people, and I do not want to be that kind of opportunity or excuse me, person, how do I not to become that kind of person and to be a better self? And that's really benefited myself in the sense that I just kind of keep moving on, and that's very helpful. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Oh, we have one over here from Ian, whom I met this morning.
These aren't planted though; they're legit questions.
So earlier you were speaking about how a great passion for creating new businesses going forward is generational, right? And personally, I have that passion, but I've never been able to start and find a starting place to either start a business or, like, career-wise, I like to think about the future. But how do you start and get into innovating and moving forward? You were speaking about just saying yes, but to new opportunities. But personally, like, how would you start, really?
Yeah. That's a fantastic question. Learning from other people's experience and other people's success is a critical part of it. One of the books that I often refer back to is a book by the founder of Nike, Phil Knight. He wrote this book called Shoe Dog. Yeah. It's a fantastic read. It's very, it flows naturally. It's just a storytelling in terms of how he built a $400 billion company from selling Japanese imported running shoes from the back of his car at track meet back in the 60s. And the journey that he took, there's so many challenges and opportunities for him to fail, for Nike to just cease operations, and he persisted and went through those challenges. And that's just one of the examples, and it's very similar if you read some of the success stories, especially those extraordinary success stories. Learn as much as you can, and they will all come to you.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. Wish you all the best. Yeah.
Well, not wanting the crickets to overcome us here, I'd just like to say thank you for sharing your time and experience with us today on the first live podcast of the Unlikely Innovators. And how about a round of applause for Shouyi?
And really, it's my honor to be here at Cambrian College and to participate this podcast by Mike and Steve, and it's a personal honor. And I've never done this live podcast before, so I am truly honored and hope to get a chance to speak again.
Absolutely.
You're a natural at it. It was very good. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
This is the point now where the listeners will get the reference you made at the beginning of the show, because they would have heard Shouyi talk about that Neil Young is some of the favorite songs for him to play on guitar. But again, I'm still blown away by people who can play guitar and harmonica at the same time. Like, I have a harmonica because it is on my bucket list to figure out how to do them both at the same time. Although I don't have, the stand that you need to have on your shoulders, so that's
a start.
That's a start. But I thought before I got there, I need to figure out how to actually use a harmonica. It's not.
You should try humming first to see if you can actually do the two things. Maybe there's an intermediary step. Don't go out and buy your harmonica stand. Well, no, if you can nail that first.
Yeah, and I haven't purchased a harmonica stand yet because, believe it or not, like, harmonica is harder than it looks, and like there's different keys for harmonica. So I bought a harmonica in the key that you're most likely to play these songs in, but it's hard. Like, I love Bruce Springsteen as well, and he does a lot of harmonica with his guitar. And like, if I could somehow, I think then I'd be the campfire hero if I could do harmonica and guitar. But as you know, Steve, I'm the intro king, and I can't play a full song, but I can play some damn good intros.
I mean, the first 8 bars of any song is where Mike Commito lives. That's your sweet spot.
Yeah.
So that's good. I mean,
I was thinking, imagine there's got to be some some market out there for somebody who can just like do live shows, but like rather than playing, 10 to 15 songs, you just do 50 intros. Just like
yeah, it
all
reminds me of the early
best.
days of downloading music when all you got was
Yeah,
the
it was the
intro on the
first-
preview.
Yeah.
That's what you are. If someone brings that model back and they need someone to strum the first 4 bars or 4 to 8 bars of a song, then you're the man.
Just get really good at intros of some of the most popular songs, and you'll make it, kids. But no, I thought another great part, and again, the listeners will hear this as well, is that we had some students in the audience, and they asked some really great questions of Shouyi, and I think he had some really insightful advice on, what to do. When you reach an impasse or difficult moment in your career, how do you move on from that, or how do you even get started in a career, especially in an innovative field? And I think he had some really great advice that you already would have heard at this point. But just a really great conversation, because especially with doing something live in front of people like you and me, that was the first time we've done it. You never know how the nerves are going to be, asking questions in front of other people. But I thought it was just really it was really great. Couldn't have asked for a better guest to experience that first live recording with us. So again, thanks to Shouyi for joining us today, and for everyone that joined us in person at the E-Dome. Appreciate you, and everyone who's tuning in now. Thanks again.
We'll see you guys again soon.
The Unlikely Innovators with Mike Commito and Steve Gravel, presented by Cambrian R&D and the Center for Smart Mining.